All right, I'll bring this Brattleboro Select Board meeting of Tuesday, September 21st, 2021 back to order. And I would like to ask, Peter, was it properly warned? I don't think I asked you that earlier this evening.
No, you didn't at that time, but yes, it has been properly warned.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, let's approve the minutes from, oh, it says the minutes from September 14th and 15th will be on the October 5th agenda. So which
We don't have
meeting
any
minutes?
minutes. so
We don't
can-
have any minutes.
No.
Very good. All
Great.
right. So chair's remarks. I have a few. Well, I think it's going to be a very interesting meeting tonight. We're going to be discussing some initiatives by the state and by town staff, and a couple of initiatives by groups collaborating for the benefit of the town. And taking a look at these initiatives from a wide perspective, we can see how these actions may be informed by the community safety concerns that the town has had. And these actions will continue to support the vulnerable among us. But I think it's important to note that these actions are, well, the town's role is supportive or ministerial in some of these actions that the town is not doing. But all this good work is playing against the background of our shared goals for anti-racism and equity in the community. And so it makes it particularly disheartening when we recognize that there are racists at play within the town of Brattleboro, and the actions towards our police chief this past week were deplorable and sad. And I was happy to hear of the many, many voices in support that hopefully drowned out all that online hate. But it just shows us that we have work to do in this town, and we need to be vigilant to combat racism in Brattleboro and continue with the work that we have pledged that we would do. And that's all I have to say, and I'll open up to our town manager. He has comments.
Thank you. Yes, I have two topics I'd like to address tonight. The first is the one that you just addressed, and I'll overlap a little bit, but also add some additional perspective to that. And then I have one other matter to address. This morning's Brattleboro Reformer included a story about the offensive memes and messages that were directed at Police Chief Norma Hardy via the police department's Facebook page. And I wanted to say three things about that incident. First, that I was proud of the department for their measured response. They placed a general statement on the Facebook page that affirmed our commitment to keeping such sites free of hate speech, rather than specifically calling out the individual person or act. And given the differential in the power of the BPD as an institution versus this individual who was acting in a way that is, offensive to the work that we're doing in the community, I thought it was important that the police department's response to that showed restraint. I thought that was appropriate. And I appreciated that's how they dealt with a difficult situation. I was grateful, as you were, Liz, for the way in which the community rallied around Chief Hardy in that moment, with dozens of people posting supportive comments and a broad range of responses, so that it wasn't like it was, one particular point of view or one particular group of people, but a cross section of the community demonstrating together that we aren't going to tolerate hateful speech and actions in Brattleboro. But I was saddened by the reminder that we do have overt racism and other forms of hate present here in Brattleboro. This incident underscores the necessity of our maintaining our long-term, ongoing commitment to intentional anti-racist work. And that's both to address systemic racism institutionally, as well as to confront person-to-person racism when we witness it. My second topic I'm going to address tonight regarding the continued transition in the leadership of town staff, as we're nearing the end of a generational transition over a period of years, when we've seen some significant changes in leadership positions. I'm advising tonight of something that been discussing with a very significant member of our management team for the last several weeks, and have arrived now at the moment when he's ready for me to say to the community that Steve Barrett is going to retire on December 18th. Steve has been a part of the town team since 1974. He was a call firefighter for 33 years, retiring at the rank of captain in 2007. At the Department of Public Works, Steve became a water pollution operator in 1980 and rose quickly to positions of leadership. He was promoted to Utilities General Supervisor in 1984, to Utilities Superintendent in 1992, to Utilities Highway Superintendent in 1995, and to Public Works Director in 1996. That's a total of 47 years of service to the town, including over 25 years as a member of the senior management team, with responsibility for the largest and most complex variety of services that we deliver to the community. Steve has been personally involved in 2 wastewater plant upgrades, the construction of the first water treatment plant, the planning and approval of the replacement water treatment plant, the expansion of the retreat wells, the construction or replacement of multiple million-gallon water storage tanks, the rerouting of traffic to create the Park Place, Linden Street, Putney Road roundabout, the rerouting of Fairground Road as part of the BUHS renovation project, and the town's response to and recovery from numerous emergencies and countless winter storms. In particular, Steve's actions on the day of Tropical Storm Irene and throughout the days and weeks that followed enabled Brattleboro to recover more quickly and fully than many other communities. That was arguably Steve's finest hour, as he put on full display his rare combination of technical knowledge, courage, and communication skills. If you need to know something about the history of town actions, decisions, or changes during the past 5 decades, you ask Steve Barrett. Thank you, Steve, for your unsurpassed dedication to our community and for your leadership on so many different occasions, large and small. As Steve approached his final years of service as Public Works Director, he prepared DPW with a succession plan to ensure that we would have a smooth transition when this time came. 2.5 years ago, Steve brought on Dan Tyler to be our Highway Utilities Superintendent. Dan has done outstanding work all across the range of DPW services and has been effective in his work as a member of the town's senior management team. When I learned of Steve's plans to retire, I convened a panel to interview Dan, and we unanimously agreed that he is ready to step up to the responsibilities of being our Public Works Director. Prior to joining the town team, Dan worked for 2 private engineering companies, was with VTrans for 3 years and DMI for 4 years, before being the principal partner at Vermont Sewer and Drain for 8 years. Dan's promotion to Public Works Director will be effective immediately upon Steve's retirement on December 18th. And we will immediately commence recruitment for the Highway Utilities Superintendent position with the intention of filling that position prior to the December 18th transition date. Thank you.
Super. Okay. Does the select board have comments on committee reports? Tim.
Well, I had come to the meeting sort of expecting to give a quick update on my recent service on the Cannabis Control Board's advisory committee. So I'm going to truncate that a little bit, a lot of it actually, and because I'm just sort of moved to kind of chime in on the earlier subject a little bit, two earlier subjects that Peter addressed. I just want to say, first off, that when that appeared in the Reformer, and I did see the online discussion and the post by the Brattleboro PD, I'm always, in these instances, I'm always reluctant to give more power to a very small few people who have these ugly beliefs. And but it's also important to acknowledge them, to say that we are committed to moving past that, to convince those who need to be welcomed to our community, whether they've lived here for a long time or they're coming in from a foreign country. It's our mission, and I think all 5 of us agree here on the select board that we want to make Brattleboro the most welcoming that we can possibly make it going forward. So I do want to say that I think our new police chief is going to be just fine. Norma is not my concern because she knows she has our support, but it's everyone else's feelings around this that I want to just acknowledge and just say that we're all committed to supporting a non-racist and welcome community. I also wanted to say really quick, 1974, wow, I barely remember the year, and that's when Steve Barrett, I was 7 or something, so, and some of us weren't around on the earth yet. So it's pretty amazing. I know Steve personally, lives across the street from me, and so we chat quite often, and I just wish him the best. And again, similar to Peter, is leaving quite a legacy behind, and congratulations to Dan. So just getting really quickly to the advisory committee. I've been serving on the Cannabis Control Board Advisory Committee as the sole representative of municipalities, and it's quite a whirlwind of meetings. The advisory committee, the advisory committee meets even more, but the subcommittees alone meet every Monday and Wednesday, twice a day if you serve on 2 subcommittees, which we all do. So I'm currently serving on public health, in which with Dr. Levine, we discuss things like labeling and requirements and inserts and what that's going to look like, how we're going to warn people to not allow this to get into the hands of kids, what kind of packaging, what kind of advertising rules are there going to be. And we're looking at a lot of other states, the way they're going about it as well, and trying to come up with good messaging. The other committee is compliance and enforcement. So it's about sort of on the ground, like who's going to be watching the shop when it comes to both retail, medicinal, all kinds of, and in that capacity is where some of the conversations around local taxes and fees are happening right now. And I'm working with some help from VLCT, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, to try to, I don't know if I want to put it so dramatically as defend the rights of municipalities, but really stick up for the rights of municipalities who are going to do a lot of legwork and be dealing with zoning issues and all kinds of paperwork on the ground level. So that's my quick update for the committees I'm serving on in Montpelier.
Well, thank you for that service, Tim. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ian?
I'll just very quickly, Liz, Peter, Tim, thank you for your words on the reform article and on the incident. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I think I couldn't articulate it as well as the 3 of you have, but just to say that it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to me. It just shows it's one of the many reminders that I see living in Vermont, that there's so much more work to be done. And I am grateful that this board is willing to commit to that work. And then Steve, thank you so much for your service. And I just want a quick shout out, because I think, as my fellow members of the board know, water and sewer is like the thing that I really like to talk about. And that does not stop during the at the board meeting. And I definitely have sent Steve a lot of emails over the last 2 years, deep diving on little things. And he's always been just so knowledgeable and kind in walking me through it as a lay person, and also sharing a little bit of his passion for it with me. And I've just been very grateful for that energy. So Steve, thank you very much again. And congratulations on your retirement.
Daniel?
I mean, I might as well, take this opportunity. I actually have in front of me a memo from our last community safety meeting, and I just want to read like this sentence from it. It says, "We acknowledge that centuries of white people holding power in our country," which is us kind of thing, including here in Vermont and in Brattleboro, has perpetuated systemic racism that has caused and still causes harm to people of color throughout our country, including here in Vermont and in Brattleboro. And so I'm not surprised that this incident happened. And I know for sure that Chief Hardy is not surprised about this, and that, we get to walk through our days being able to comment on something like this rather than actually really fully experience it. And I was in half a mind to say nothing about it. But honestly, like, our silence on this would not be the right thing either. So I hope that the police will investigate if appropriate. If there is stuff to be investigated, then that they will not only post on Facebook about it, but also will take it seriously enough to do something else about it. And our commenting on this will no doubt lead to further of these kinds of things. This is a thing that is endemic in this country and in the country where I'm from too. Don't think we're immune to it. And so, Chief Hardy has dedicated her life to public service and is an exceptionally qualified and experienced person to lead our police department. And I'm really glad that she's here to do that. She has broad shoulders and will manage this, and we will stand with her as we would have the day before I saw this newspaper article. So there's that. Steve, congratulations. I hope you enjoy your retirement. Dan, congratulations to you. I'm looking forward to working with you further. And let's get to the meeting.
All right, I just wanted to, again, just congratulate Steve and congratulate Dan. And I hadn't really realized that Ian was such a sparkling conversationalist. So I'll have to tap into that. Public participation. Is there a member of the public who would like to speak about something that is not on tonight's agenda? If so, please raise your hand, or otherwise get the attention of Patrick Moreland. All right, I have not seen anything, so let's continue with our meeting. The first item, have I missed anything? No. The first item is the consent agenda, and there are 3 items. The recommendation for appointment of Deputy Health Officer, Fire Inspector Eric Davis, the monthly financial report, and the authorizing the purchase of 2 police cruisers. So if the board is asked to approve the consent agenda as presented, is there someone who would like to make a motion? Yes, Ian.
Yeah, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. There we go.
Great. Ian has moved to approve the consent agenda as presented. All select board members raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Are there any no's? No, passes 4-0. Thank you. All right, let's convene as liquor commissioners. Is there someone who would like to move to convene? Daniel.
I move to convene as liquor commissioners.
Great, thank you. Daniel has moved to convene as liquor commissioners. All select board members in favor of convening, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 There are no no's, it passes 4-0. All right. The Stone Church's outside consumption permit. Peter?
Thank you. So in the meeting this evening are both Robin Johnson, the owner and proprietor of the Stone Church. I see he's brought his video up, so he's prepared to speak with us about this. Also, Sue Fillion, our planning director, who is possibly more relevant, depending on where the conversation goes, more relevant to this particular liquor item than to most liquor items, because this outside consumption permit is specifically focused on COVID safety. And so there was consideration at the Development Review Board recently about the specific configuration of the outdoor consumption area. And this application did receive approval from the DRB as a temporary measure through next April, recognizing that it is meant to protect public safety for the events that occur at Stone Church in the meantime. Mr. Johnson can speak to the potential that there might be a desire to utilize this space, differently and or more permanently than that, but that would be subject to later action by the DRB. What's before you tonight is staff's recommendation along with the DRB action, where we're asking you also to approve this outside consumption permit so that events can be held at the Stone Church, where the consumption of alcohol and food will occur outside on the lawn, and people indoors will be masked and enjoying the performance. And I probably said more than my fair share and should ask Mr. Johnson if he's got something to add.
I just have a question though, are we granting a outside consumption permit on a temporary basis as well?
So that is the ask.
Okay.
Is for the outside consumption permit. And
But
as with liquor
temporary.
licenses, you grant a local approval. The implementation is all subject to the regulation also of the DLC, the state's Division of Liquor Control. So so this is, the only thing that's unusual about this matter is the fact that it is specifically intended in its current form for COVID safety and has been approved by the DRB for that reason. And I see Hillary is also in the meeting and raising her hand, so she may have something to add about the DLC relationship here.
Yes, I'm happy to have Hillary speak, but again, I am just a little confused as to whether our license is also temporary. Hillary?
So I can speak to that. So the license would be approved if you choose to do what the DRB is recommending through April 30th of 2022, which is when the license would expire anyway. And at that point, when Robin Johnson and the Stone Church apply for their renewal licenses of their first class, their third class, their entertainment license, should they choose at that time to also apply for an outside consumption permit renewal, my understanding from the DRB is that they would look to approve this again, or look through it, review it, decide whether or not they want to suggest approval, and it would go before you like it would any other renewal.
Thank you, Hillary.
You're welcome.
Sue, is there something that you would like to discuss? All right.
Oh.
Seeing nothing, let's
There's
ask
Sue.
Mr. Oh, there you are, Sue.
Hi, sorry about that. So no, I think Hillary and Peter covered it. Just from the DRB perspective, they were, they felt that they were comfortable issuing it because it's a COVID measure. But, if this is going to be a long-term plan, they would want it to come back, and they might require other site improvements or considerations.
Great, thank you, Sue. Mr. Johnson, would you like to tell us some things about this rather unusual request?
I think, am I unmuted? Yeah. I think Peter actually covered it. This came out of the fact that we had shows contracted through the latter part of 2021. And as we came closer, cases went up, and across the country, most venues and promoters adopted more stringent protocols. So we looked across our calendar for the rest of the year and took kind of the most stringent protocols we had agreed to and decided that would be we'd implement those for all shows. So it wasn't confusing for attendees or for staff. And that included in that is 100% mask mandate for the indoors. And I know a lot of venues are doing that and they have bars, but my thought was if you have a mask mandate and you have a bar, then you don't have a mask mandate anymore because people are bringing the mask down, drinking and holding their beer and just sitting there. So to make it easier for the attendees and make people more comfortable and make it easier on staff policing the mask mandate, we decided we would try to move all concessions outside. And so we've had a few shows now like that. People seem to really enjoy it. It's definitely a lot more work for less income on our part, but it seems like the only way to move forward at this time safely. And I can also briefly speak to the fact that we've talked about, I mean, due to the fact that we really don't expect many of our shows to be economically sustainable during while we're in this kind of strange COVID period. We are interested in using that space to sell food and beverages during off times too, but we're in the process of approaching that administratively and figuring out exactly what those steps are. So currently this is just for events, but we're interested in expanding it, in order to help us kind of survive until things become a little bit more normal again.
Great, thank you. Our select board members have comments to make about Mr. Johnson's application? Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I just want to say thank you for a creative solution, and it's important for people around here that they can go to your venue and enjoy a concert, and it's important that they can feel safe in doing so. And and I know that that's important to you and your staff, and so I think this is a good kind of workaround. I hope that in the colder days we I don't know, the folks bundle up, but yeah, no, I appreciate it, and I'm glad that your organization is here.
Anyone else? Ian.
I have one comment, one question. One comment, I just wanted to shout out on, I was walking by when the accessibility ramp was being put in, and that's great. I actually had heard a criticism of the fact that that there was no way for someone to get in who maybe couldn't use the stairs like that. So I'm really glad to see that. And then my question is, can you just sort of explain to me what it's going to look like? So it's going to be in front of the ramp in that grass area, and then there's going to be actually like an installed bar or something. And is that going to be like in that area, or is it going to be like up on the stairs? Or I'm sort of curious. Oh, he's muted.
Yeah, so the way we have it set up currently is we've got like fence posts with poly rope along the perimeter of the south side of the front entry and the Grove Street facade. And then I've got two pop-up tents that we put on the in between the ramp and the building.
Oh.
And then we have currently our food cart parked right below the large south window. So the big window on the Grove Street facade. And so we kind of have people in that area between the ramp and the building primarily. We bring out tables and chairs, and then we bring them back in at the end of the night. We don't have or foresee a permanent bar setup, so we just bring out tables and set up an outdoor bar. We've got a small jockey box that'll serve 2 draft beers, and then we just bring other beverages out in coolers, and then the same thing, we just load everything back in at the end of the night. So there's nothing there that's permanent other than the ramp. You know, if down the line we wanted to do something more permanent there, you know, we'd look at, you know, how to properly landscape and build.
Yeah.
Everyone, you know, everyone's happy with it. But our current plans are for a system that can all be removed very easily.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, man, that does sound like a lot of work. Jeez.
Tim,
Yeah, I was just going to say, I have my full support for sort of a creative response to a very vexing problem, I think, when it comes to indoor performances. And I just want to throw out there that, you know, you're providing a little extra reassurance to some people who might not be comfortable going to another place in town that is going to have, you know, live music occasionally, but won't have the requirements such as testing. I think you're doing as well, and vaccination cards, taking a look at those, right? So I think it's great that you're offering that, as well as it's a great venue. Anybody who hasn't been there should check it out. And it's sort of unfortunate it has to be this sort of setup, but who knows? I think hopefully you'll get some people who will really appreciate the extra feeling of safety.
Yeah, so far the feedback we've gotten from people that have attended, they're really happy about it. So.
and I've been many times, and I remember in the winter time, people went outside anyway just to get a breath of fresh air. So people are in and out, and I think it's going to work just fine. It has my support. So anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll make a motion to approve an outdoor consumption permit for the Stone Church located at 210 Main Street in Brattleboro.
Thank you. Tim has made a motion to approve an outdoor consumption permit for the Stone Church at 210 Main Street. All select board members in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
It has carried 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, new business. Brattleboro BF 2000. Yes? Oh,
I moved to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
thank
Not
you,
liquor and
Daniel.
sewer. That's a whole other thing.
That's
Wait.
really
That's what we do in Wales.
Yeah. Okay, Daniel has moved to adjourn as the commissioners. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 4-0. New business. Peter, do you want to introduce this issue?
Sure. Yeah, this is a very exciting item. For several years now, the town and the Wyndham Regional Commission and our legislative delegation have all been urging forward progress on the replacement of the bridge that is over the Whetstone Brook on Route 9, Western Avenue. As you come in, you're just leaving West Brattleboro Village, heading towards exit 2, Memorial Park area. And there's a very narrow bridge that constrains traffic there and is hazardous for walkers and bicyclists and so on. And the state is, in fact, undertaking a project there, has begun the work on that. And there's several representatives from VTrans and their project team that are in the meeting this evening to present to us their alternatives analysis and recommended project. So I'll ask that they raise hands so that Patrick can know whose cameras and mics to open up and bring you into the meeting for the presentation. Thank you.
Hello.
Nick is still muted,
And so is Laura.
and as is Laura.
There we go. Got it.
Okay. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I have to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation, if that's possible. So I'm going to try to do a screen share here.
Great.
I know sometimes it needs to be enabled on your end.
It has been enabled, so give it a whirl.
Oh, there we go.
And there's Gary as well.
Gary LaRoche.
Yeah.
There's Gary.
Okay, there's Gary. Welcome, Gary.
Oh,
Thank you.
So hopefully everybody can see my screen now.
Mhm.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you for the great introduction, Peter. This is a really exciting project for the town. This is Vermont Route 9, Bridge 54 over the Whetstone Brook. This is the alternatives presentation meeting. So I'm Laura Stone, the VTrans scoping engineer. We also have Gary LaRoche here tonight. He's going to be the design project manager for this project. Unfortunately, Kyle Obenauer couldn't make it tonight, but he is the historic preservation specialist. This is currently a historic structure. Not listed here, but just as important, we also have Nick Wark, who is the state hydraulics engineer. And I also noticed that Colin Bratton was in the was in the crowd, the RPC, and we really encourage their attendance in these and their participation in these meetings. So thank you for attending. So the purpose of the meeting tonight, we really want to provide an understanding of our approach to the project. We're going to provide an overview of the project constraints, the project resources, discuss our recommended alternative and the alternatives that we evaluated in the scoping report. And I have at the bottom there, provide an opportunity to ask questions and voice concerns. And I'm really happy to take questions as they come up, if that's okay with the select board, make this more of a kind of a back and forth dialogue instead of me just talking at you all night long.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So here's a location map. It is located just to the west of Melrose Street. I think many here kind of familiar with the location here. So there's kind of an aerial view. And there's Melrose Street, and the bridge is located just to the west on Vermont Route 9. I'm going to go over the project development process at VTrans. Again, project overview, talk about the existing conditions of the bridge, the alternatives we considered, and discuss our recommended alternative. We're going to talk about maintenance of traffic. The schedule, so when you can expect to see this in construction, a summary, and again, questions at the bottom, but you can really bring up any questions as they arise. So here's just a chart of our VTrans project development process. And this slide is really just to show that we're at this really, really early stage of project development. Project has been funded and we've initiated this, this phase called project definition. This is where we identify the cultural resources, the environmental resources, and constraints around the bridge. Evaluate alternatives. We have this public participation piece, which is where we are right now. And ultimately, at the end of project definition, we really want to build consensus towards a project. And kind of at the end of this process, we're at project defined. That's when the project is going to move into project design. That's when we're going to be quantifying the areas of impact, getting any permits, go through the right-of-way process, really start developing more robust set of plans. From there, we go to contract award and then into construction. So I guess this, this graphic isn't necessarily applicable to the bridge that's out there right now. Currently, it is an arch structure, but in talking about the alternatives, this might be helpful to some people. So just so you understand, the deck is the riding surface. That's the portion of concrete sort of on top of beams. The beams and the deck, a lot of times we consider that a superstructure. We call that the superstructure. And then the support or the foundation of the bridge, in the engineering world, we call that a substructure. So Act 153 of the 2012 legislative session. In 2012, this legislation came out. It says that the local share of a town highway structure is reduced by 50% for rehabilitating versus replacement. And it is reduced an additional 50% for closing the road to traffic during construction. So this is a town-owned structure. There's going to be town funds involved. Prior to 2012, the match was always a 10% local match. So there are options for a 5% match and a 2.5% match, just so the town is aware of that. Here's a picture looking west over the bridge. The roadway is classified as a principal arterial. This is on the national highway system, located in somewhat of an urban area. It is a class 1 town highway, so it is owned by the town. The existing bridge is a 60-foot span, single span, cast in place concrete arch. It was constructed in 1914 and is considered historic. Here's a picture looking east over the bridge. There's a narrow sidewalk over the north side of the bridge. So that's a 4-foot wide sidewalk. Our standard is a 5-foot wide sidewalk. So that is, in terms of accessibility, slightly substandard. It also doesn't really match before the bridge and after the bridge, kind of what's going on with the corridor on Route 9. There are sidewalks on both sides of the road on this corridor. It is located in a densely populated area, and the bridge is skewed 20 degrees. I'll also point out in this picture, you can see just how narrow this bridge is. So the existing typical section is 11 foot 1 foot. So that means there's 2 11-foot travel lanes with 1-foot shoulders on the edge. So the standard does call for 10-foot shoulders for these traffic volumes in this class of roadway. So it is, it's grossly substandard in width. So existing conditions, the sidewalk is in poor condition. Again, it doesn't meet the standard for width. The barrel of the arch has scattered fine map cracking. The head walls have scattered fine map cracking with efflorescence. There's leakage and saturation in the concrete immediately surrounding the embedded water line. So there is a water line. I have a good picture of it coming up. It goes right through this arch. There's heavy abrasion along the water line at both of the footings at the abutments. The paved width over the bridge, I already mentioned this in the last slide, but it is substandard by 18 feet. So it is quite substandard. And the embedded exposed water line blocks high flood flows and catches debris. And this arch is located within a flood insurance study area. So there's a picture of that water line that goes through the bridge, and you can see there is quite a bit of saturation. That's kind of like this wet spot of concrete here, which just tells us that water is really infiltrating down into this arch. You can also see this kind of white stuff here to the left side of the page. That's efflorescence. So that's like a chemical reaction that happens in the concrete when there is, cracking and saturation getting down in there. The existing culvert is rated a 6. It is satisfactory in terms of condition. There's the bridge fascia. The original railing, the historic railing, is gone. Now it's just a concrete railing there. There is cracking and efflorescence in the head walls. It's a little bit hard to see in this picture. And again, there is that exposed water line to point out. There's that poor condition sidewalk. So resources in the area. There is northern long-eared bat habitat, and that really just means we're restricted to what time of year we can cut any trees down that need to be cut for the project. There are archaeological resources in the southwest and southeast quadrants. There are historic resources, both the bridge itself, and then there's several surrounding properties that are considered historic. FEMA floodplains and utilities. There are both municipal, there's underground utilities here, and aerial utilities. So quite a few utilities through the project area. So again, debris blockage. This is kind of an important piece to the hydraulics of the bridge. It was modeled. The existing conditions were modeled as if the debris was hung up on that water line. And what we found was that there's no freeboard measured from the bottom of the water line at the 2% and 1% AEP. So the standard hydraulic, the hydraulic standard is that we need 1 foot of freeboard from that lowest point. So there is overtopping that occurs approximately 200 feet west of the bridge, the 1% AEP, with an approximate maximum water depth of 0.62 feet. So here's an existing conditions layout. So this is just a picture, like if you're like a bird's eye view. So if you're like a bird looking down onto the bridge. This pink area here, at least it looks pink on my screen, is the existing sidewalk. This tannish color is existing roadway. Also good to point out this neon green line, that is the town-owned right-of-way. You can see this S line right here is sewer. You can see this water line is this dashed line with a W. And we do have some 4F historic resources as well as archaeological resources shown on this layout. It is a little bit busy. So existing conditions, this is just shows the typical section. That's that 11-foot, 1 foot typical section. This is a profile. So this is like if you're standing in the stream looking through the bridge. So this really just shows there's, you know, about a 1% to almost 2% grade in the road. So it is pretty flat through this area. Design criteria and considerations. So there is, and I'm sorry, I usually try to put my units on here and they're not, I do apologize, but ADT is an average daily traffic of 17,500 vehicles per day. Now that is extremely high. We have stretches of the interstate that have less traffic volumes than this. A design hourly volume, so that's really your peak hour of traffic of 1,700 vehicles per hour. Percent trucks of 8.5. And a design speed of 30 miles per hour, but this does have a separate speed sign for trucks. Buses and trucks are signed for 25 miles an hour. And again, there's a lot of utilities through the project area. So the alternatives considered, we looked at the no action alternative. There is some additional maintenance that would be required within the next 10 years. Also, I mean, I consider this structure to be functionally obsolete just due to the substandard width. So we didn't consider the no action. Next, an arch rehabilitation. This is a historic structure. It can be rehabilitated. It would maintain that 11-foot, 1 foot typical with a 4-foot sidewalk on the north side. It would have about a 40-year design life. Next, there's an arch rehabilitation option with widening. This would rehabilitate the existing arch, but add like steel beams on either side, so we could widen this to the minimum standard while keeping that existing arch ring in place. You would expect about a 30-year design life out of an arch rehabilitation with widening. Next, we looked at a full bridge replacement with a new arch. Again, this would meet the minimum standard, an 11-foot, 10-foot typical with a 5-foot sidewalk on the north side and the south side. We would want to increase the skew to the channel for improved hydraulic condition. And because this is on the national highway system, any full bridge replacement is designed to a 100-year design life. So typically a state route not on the national highway system, we use a 75-year design life, but on the national highway system, we use this 100 years. And then there's a full bridge replacement with a conventional bridge. This is definitely a more economical option, a more constructible option than a new arch. Again, it would meet the minimum standard typical, those 11-foot travel lanes with 10-foot shoulders on either side. We'd increase the skew to the channel for improved hydraulic conditions. And again, that 100-year design life. So I'll just run through the typical sections and layouts for these quickly. So the arch rehabilitation matches the existing typical. It looks very, very similar to the existing conditions. You can really see how it really funnels at the bridge location when you look to the east and the west on Vermont Route 9. You know, for arch rehabilitation, we'd repair, replace the outer portions of the arch ring and spandrel walls. We put in new bridge railing, new pavement, and new sidewalk. There would be a relocation of the water line, which would be for improved hydraulics. So we could improve the hydraulic condition with a rehabilitation and repairs to the foundation. Again, this would have about a 40-year design life. Next, we looked at arch rehabilitation with the widening. So again, this is kind of showing the existing arch, and we would just widen it on either side for that 11-foot, 10-foot typical section. We'd remove the spandrel walls, we'd add the beams. We would expect a little bit less of a design life out of a project like this, just because there is a lot of water infiltration and saturation that gets in between the joints between the old arch and the new sections. So we would expect about a 35-year design life out of a rehabilitation with widening. Next, we looked at a full bridge replacement with a new arch. Here's the typical section. Again, it shows that that standard 11-foot, 10-foot typical section. And the full bridge replacement options, as you can see, we recommend, just to match the corridor, a sidewalk on both sides of the bridge. So currently it is just on the north side. So we'd want to add a sidewalk to the other side as well. There's a full bridge replacement with a new arch layout. We would want to increase the skew slightly, just to match this channel skew to the road a little bit for improved hydraulics. And again, a 100-year design life. Next, we looked at a full bridge replacement with a conventional bridge. And so this is our kind of typical steel beam bridge. It's a steel beam with a composite concrete deck on top. And that 11-foot travel lanes with 10-foot shoulders on either side. And again, that sidewalk on both sides of the bridge. So there's the conventional bridge layout. It looks very, very similar to the layout 2 slides back. We'd increase the skew. It's just a different structure type. So here is the proposed profile. We really wouldn't recommend changing the profile of the road here. It is very constrained, kind of on both, either all quadrants of the bridge. So we wouldn't want to raise the road or lower the road or anything like that. Really want to, keep impacts to a minimum. So, our ultimate recommendation was a full bridge replacement. Really, that was based on the grossly substandard width. I know there is documented safety issues with pedestrians and bikes. It doesn't match the existing typical section, does not match the corridor. And there are hydraulic concerns with the existing configuration of the arch and just located within a flood zone. We felt that replacing this structure versus rehabilitating it was definitely the way to go. Again, we would construct it to the minimum standard, that 11-foot, 10-foot typical, with a 5.5-foot sidewalk on each side of the bridge. Would have a span length of approximately 75 feet. The skew would be increased to 40 degrees to match the channel for better hydraulics. We'd really want to choose a shallow superstructure here. So again, that depth of that superstructure, the more shallow that is, the more water can make its way through the bridge during a high flow event. And we would design to the 100-year design life, as this is on the national highway system. So next to the tricky part, maintenance of traffic. So we only considered 2 maintenance of traffic options here. Phased construction is when you construct 1/2 of the bridge at a time. Just due to how narrow it is and the high traffic volumes, you really need to maintain 2-way traffic through the project site. So we did not consider phased construction here. So that leaves us with an off-site detour and a temporary bridge. So an off-site detour, there would be a road closure because this is a town highway, a Class 1 town highway. It would be signed by the state. The shortest route around is 3.7 miles end to end. It would be a 60-day bridge closure, and there would be a separate route for trucks, which is 64.8 miles end to end. So it is a fairly treacherous route for trucks to make. So this is what we would recommend for a passenger car detour. It would be Vermont Route 9 to Orchard Street and Meadowbrook Road back to Vermont Route 9. Again, this has an end-to-end distance. So the end-to-end distance, that's if you're going from one end of the bridge all the way around the detour to the other end of the bridge. So that's the maximum distance that may need to be driven is 3.7 miles. We would, because there is such a robust sidewalk network, we'd want to maintain pedestrians as well. I think this Melrose Street detour would be a good route for pedestrians. I believe there is a sidewalk along this route. This does have an end-to-end distance of 0.7 miles. And then the truck route would be Route 9 to Vermont Route 30 and Vermont Route 100 back to Vermont Route 9. And again, it does have an end-to-end distance of about 65 miles. So next we looked at a temporary bridge. Because of the high traffic volumes, we would need to put in a 2-way temporary bridge here. Also, we would want a sidewalk on the bridge to maintain pedestrians, because there's a sidewalk just because of the sidewalk network. We would recommend a temporary bridge on the downstream side, and I'll show you what the layout of that looks like. So here's this orange section is the sidewalk path, and then we have a 2-lane temporary bridge here. We looked at an upstream temporary bridge layout just because the close proximity of the houses to the road here. So these kind of solid lines here, those are houses. And here, I would like to mention this right here. This is a play structure that the temporary bridge goes right through. There's a picture of it. It would need to be relocated during construction. So our recommended scope is a full bridge replacement with a conventional bridge. It's really the most economical, the most constructible bridge type here. And we'd maintain traffic on a temporary bridge. So again, that 11-foot, 10-foot typical section with sidewalk on either side of the bridge. We would increase the span slightly to a 75-foot span. Skew would be increased to 40 degrees to match the channel. Shallow superstructure. 100-year design life, as this is on the national highway system. There is right-of-way needed for that temporary bridge. An aerial utility relocation would be needed. And a municipal utility relocation would be needed. And I think regardless of what alternative the town wants to move forward with, I think there's going to be an extensive utility relocation here. So on to the costs. So this is a pretty busy slide. So I think unless there's really questions about, all this stuff down here, I'll just focus on kind of the bottom line. So what we're recommending here is the full bridge replacement with a new steel beam bridge. The temporary bridge option, it does have a total cost of $5.1 million. That includes That includes the utility relocation. It includes the engineering costs, any archaeological studies. It includes construction itself. So that's kind of the total project cost. It would have a town share of 10% because it is a full bridge replacement with maintaining traffic. And so there would be a 10% share. So approximately $500,000 for the town. The offsite detour option, it is a little bit cheaper. It's 4.6 million for the total cost. And because the town would be eligible for that 50% reduction, it would have a 5% cost to the town at about 230,000. I lost my mouse here. Here we are. So this is the number I'm looking at here. There are the other options. If you were to replace it with a new arch, you can see it's about $400,000 more expensive. So the new steel beam bridge, it is a bit more economical. Unless there's any other questions or any other numbers anybody wants to discuss on this sheet, it is kind of busy, so I'll just keep moving along. So preliminary project schedule, we do have this in our budget for construction in the summer of 2025. Again, there's a total cost estimate of 5.1 million and an estimated cost to the town of about $500,000. So really, the next steps at this point, we're going to wait for the town's response and a recommendation on a proposed project. We've presented the alternatives. I'm going to provide the town with a sheet that just lists out each of the alternatives with kind of check boxes. And so the town can say, you know, we want alternative, whatever, 4B, full bridge replacement with a temporary bridge, or if there's another alternative that you're interested in, we would, you know, go and talk to our management staff about changing our recommended scope. After we get a response from the town, we'll start developing conceptual plans. We distribute to the town for comment. That's when we would process the finance and maintenance agreement with the town. There would be another public information meeting to discuss the conceptual plans. And that's when we also start our right-of-way process. So before we get to questions and comments, I would just like to point out this, this link at the top here, this web address. So this is the project SharePoint site. So the scoping report is at this site. There's a fact sheet at this site. Tonight's presentation will be put up on this site. All future presentations, all future plan sets, so conceptual plans, preliminary plans, final plans, they're all going to be put up on this site, which is available to the public, just so you can kind of track the life of the project. So I guess any questions, comments?
Great. Well, thank you, Laura. That was really very helpful. And I must say, from my perspective, I think this is a very exciting project. We're thrilled that VTrans has taken into account, you know, the bad condition of this bridge, and particularly the width of it. I know that people have been asking for years for sidewalks and bike lanes, and this has it all. And I very much appreciate the temporary bridge, because asking trucks to go 65 miles out of their way seems inappropriate. So I'm all in favor, and I thank you. And also, Gary is also the VTrans representative for the Connecticut River Bridge. Is that true? Gary? Gary's mute. Can you, Gary?
He must be muted. Maybe he can't unmute himself.
Yeah,
there we go.
It's very possible that he is.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to
There
welcome
you go.
him and thank him. Gary, right? You're our man in VTran Bridges for Brattleboro.
Yes, I am.
Well, that's wonderful. I thank you and I welcome you. And Are there other select board members who would like to comment? Daniel.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for the presentation. It was really, really helpful. And I'm in agreement with Liz that the addition of sidewalks on both sides of the bridge, you know, the widening of the roadway and the increased safety for pedestrians and cyclists is really great. Looking at the proposed, you know, plan, I noted that the real cost driver is that detour versus the, you know, the temporary bridge. And, you know, and so I am a realist and truck drivers use this route regularly. And if you wouldn't mind kind of like clarifying the detour for the truck route, maybe you could go back to that slide.
So when we look at detours, we really just look at the shortest route around, and this, it has to be on state routes. So this is the shortest route around on state highways. That's not saying that every truck would take this. It's, you know, it depends where they're coming from and where they're going. This is just the end to end. If they were, you know, really going from here to here, this is what they would take.
And so as I understood the busy slide with all the numbers on, that detour, if we have the temporary bridge instead of the detour, it's about a $300,000 increase in the cost.
Yes, so there is an additional total project cost because we're building that temporary bridge and the temporary roadway to connect to that temporary bridge. And then because the share for the town, because of that, that's that Act 153 from the 2012 legislative session slide that I showed kind of near the beginning. So if a town chooses to close the road during construction, we do reduce the share by 50%. And so typically projects are 80% federally funded, 10% state funded, and 10% town funded. And so in this case, the state would pick up the extra 5%. So it would be 80 federal, 15 state, and 5% town by closing the road during construction.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to kind of highlight that, and the traffic, the non-truck traffic would have like an additional couple of miles on their journey.
Yeah, I'll bring back that. So I mean, the detour route that we would sign, that would be chosen by the town. So it's possible there's a better route than this that the town would want signed for passenger cars routes, but this was just kind of, you know, going onto the maps, what kind of made sense.
Yeah.
From our lens.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me too. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's select board members like to comment? Tim.
Yeah, looking at the detour versus the temporary bridge from a town cost perspective, obviously it looked like on every decision on that slide, it would definitely more than double the town's cost to have the temporary bridge. But it seems like it would be batty to do it the other way, if you don't mind me saying. Like I can't imagine when the community starts to chime in here, when people would really choose the non-temporary bridge. My question is, does the recommended plan definitely increase resiliency when it comes to possible future floods? Because, you know, we have to really start to think about every kind of future proofing we can when it comes to situations like Irene, etc.
I'll have Nick answer that question. Nick Wark, he might be muted.
Patrick just has to find the right name in the list to send a message to.
Sorry, I have background noise here, so I keep muting myself after he unmutes me. But yeah, so my title at VTrans is hydraulics engineer. So these structures are going to be larger than the existing arch, and they're not going to have that utility hung below them, which is kind of a debris trap. So you will see some improvement in flood capacity and resilience. I'm not sure it's going to fix everything. This is kind of a low section of road, and as you saw in the profile, the road is actually lower to the east side. So I'm not sure we're going to solve all of the overtopping problems, but it will be an improvement.
Does anybody recall if it was overtopped? Maureen?
Well, I
Was.
think all of Route 9 was, so.
I just
yeah.
wasn't sure where exactly, but they would make
I think
sense.
someone sent us pictures, and they had mentioned 6 feet of water. I don't think that was in the road. I think that might have been in their lawn, but I would guess there was a couple feet of water going over the road during that rain.
Yeah.
And does this have a benchmark then, Nick, to be like a 500-year storm designed to something like that?
The
or-
price would go up if it was 500 years. We design these to 50 years for state
50
highways.
years. Thank you.
So that's a 2% chance of being met or exceeded within any given calendar year. So in some of these slides, you'll see 2% AEP, which is annual exceedance probability. People are starting to think that, oh, it's a 50-year storm. We just had one. We're safe for 50 years. So we're trying to change that mindset by using those annual exceedance probabilities.
But that replacement of 35 years is fairly depressing, because I hope we all make it to 35 more years, and just think on our deathbeds, we know we have to replace hundreds of them. That would be really depressing, I think.
Maybe for you, I'm not going to worry about it. So.
I'm going for it. Thanks for that.
Ian, do you have a comment?
I've just been absorbing all of this information. I appreciate how in depth it is. Yeah, I mean, I think my initial take is it makes a lot of sense to go for the design that's going to last the longest, because it's going to cost a lot of money and will disrupt us in some way. And I appreciate Tim's breakdown on really the difference between offsite versus temporary bridge for what the go around is going to be. I guess I'm a little curious if I could just get a little bit on. So if we went for the recommendation for the temporary bridge detour, it's still, so it's going to take, so it's 10 months to build the temporary bridge. Do I understand that? That's why it adds that much time to the construction duration?
Yeah, and typically for a temporary bridge, and this isn't necessarily how it's going to happen, but I do put 18 months because sometimes the contractor will go in the fall before the project construction and set up the temporary bridge. Mm-hmm. And they would then in the springtime move traffic over, so the next springtime. So that's why that 18 months is there. That doesn't mean it's definitely going to be done like that. They could construct the temporary bridge and construct the new bridge in the same construction year. Okay. It's just hard to say at this point.
Yeah.
Means and methods.
But Laura, it's much less it's not really 18 months of traffic disturbance, because the traffic will be maintained by the temporary bridge. So there may be a long construction period, but very little actual traffic disruption.
Yeah, the traffic disruption is I would say really at the most just when we're transitioning cars from the current alignment onto the temporary bridge. And then again, at the end of the construction season, when we're transferring them back to the new structure, that's really when you would see the maximum impacts to traffic. But you're right, traffic would be maintained. You know, you might get a little bit of reduced traffic speeds based on kind of the curve of that temporary bridge alignment. You know, we may post it for a little bit, maybe 10 miles an hour less. That's really something that'll be designed. You know, you're going to get your lollygaggers that want to go out there and look at construction slow down kind of moving through the project area. But yeah, you're right. Correct.
Great. Ian, have you finished commenting?
Yeah, yes. I'm sorry, I'm looking at this chart. Just like a lot of, I'm going through it, yeah.
Okay. Daniel, you have another comment?
Yeah, I was just curious about what communication has already happened with the landowners on the western side of the bridge, where the temporary bridge would kind of go through.
There has not been much communication with them. You know, before scaring people, we want to make sure, you know, this is the project we're moving forward with.
Right.
We have had, so I can't remember the name now, but not the property with the play structure, but the property on the other side of the river. They did reach out to send some flood pictures, and they seemed very supportive of a project here. Again, we haven't reached out to the property owners with that play structure, but it would be, you know, it'd be relocated. You know, they could even, you know, there's going to be a negotiation process. They're going to be compensated for the right of way there. And it's, if they're not agreeable to the project, if they don't want to give up the right of way, then there is a condemnation process that the town would need to go through to prove necessity for the project. So that's just something that the town, because this is a town-owned structure, that would be on the town to enter that process. Just something to be aware of.
Yeah, that's where we saw Gary last, I think.
That's correct.
Yes. Yes.
So we're, to add on to what Laura had to say about property owner contact, generally we reach out toward the end of preliminary plans to have our initial introduction to all of the property owners, to go over the project, just to you know, kind of prime that conversation before we get into developing right-of-way plans and you know, then moving into negotiations. So we try to reach out early in the design process to make everybody aware, you know, take their concerns into consideration. For instance, with utility pole relocations, and you know, making sure we're not putting something somewhere that's undesirable. So trying to accommodate those sort of things as we develop the project.
Great. So if the select boards has made their comments, let's open it up to public comment. There's a hand at public. Let's see who's there.
Public is the meeting room, the select board meeting room.
Right.
There are some members of the public who are there, so Patrick is bringing them into the meeting, into the video meeting.
Great. Okay, please state your name and where you live, please.
Great, I'm Aaron Smith. I live at 736 Western Avenue, where they're proposing this temporary bridge.
Excellent. Please
Right,
comment.
Well, I have some great concerns about many things with this replacement. I will be first off to admit that I think a bridge replacement is needed. I witness traffic on that bridge every day. I cross it on my bicycle, and the bridge is substandard, but it doesn't stop concerns about my quality of life in the piece of property that I own. Presently, with the trees lining Western Avenue and the Whetstone Brook, my view outside my living room, bedroom, and dining room is trees. Those will all have to be removed with this bridge, creating less privacy, less desirability of the property, in my opinion. And the trajectory of this bridge, not only does it remove the play structure, goes through my yard and then exits out the corner of my driveway, which will create much light pollution coming through my house as people taking the corner and driving up around. The noise will be greater. I already realized that. I have concerns about the width of this bridge and how much land it's going to take away from me because of right of way after the road is constructed. With the additional over 20 feet of width of this bridge, I'm concerned about speed is already a factor. People do slow down typically for the bridge that's in place, but if you add 10-foot shoulders on each side and 5-foot sidewalks, how does that, is the road going to neck down immediately after the bridge, or are we taking away property from the front yard? And I'm really thinking that the quality of life during construction and then thereafter with the removal of trees is going to be great. And I'm just very concerned, and I don't know how much adjustability there is in the plan of the bridge. Presently, there's no sidewalk on the downstream side well before west of the bridge, and the sidewalk doesn't pick up until the corner of my driveway. So I'm just wondering about, you know, beyond the scope of this temporary bridge and this permanent bridge, what's going to happen? Is the road going to get widened? Is everybody along that road going to lose more property? Is that going to add to the speed of traffic? People already will not stop for you to cross the road, even in designated crosswalk. I just have lots of concerns. Surprised nobody's reached out. I guess I just wanted to say my piece.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
I'm Jennifer Smith. I live there too. I go that road every day. I jog 2 miles. I actually go down the street on purpose, use the crosswalk. I have no problem crossing the street. I have no problem with the fact that there's a sidewalk on only one side. That sidewalk actually ends 6 houses after our house on our side of the street. So I don't really feel a need for the
Second sidewalk.
The second sidewalk. The sidewalks in that area are no better than what's on that bridge. They're all kind of in disarray, but traffic flies. I wear neon yellow every morning when running, and I go to the crosswalk on purpose. People do not stop for us. That play structure is not just a play structure. It is a clubhouse. It is buried in the ground. It was built for our children, who are very sad and very distraught and don't want to live here anymore because what this might do. I spend every day in that section of yard running around with my children playing. So this is really going to affect us in lots of different ways. And I'm worried, like, there's nowhere where the breakdown lane is 10 feet wide on any section of that road. Traffic flies, they get past the school zone, heading to our house, and then we can hear them stepping on the gas and going faster as they go by our house.
All right. Laura, do you want to comment now, or do you want to speak to the Smiths some other time?
Yeah, I guess I can comment now. In terms of sort of the construction, there's kind of 2 issues here. There's permanent, kind of the final, what is this final project going to look like? We are widening the road. It is going to be, it's going to be closer to your house. The addition of that sidewalk, that's something that's a design feature that the town can decide to move forward with or not. And I think that the town should discuss that further. So there is going to be the removal of trees here because of that roadway widening. So there would be, and that's something that when you go through the negotiation process, you know, you should be thinking about all of these concerns, the loss of the trees. We would plant new trees as part of the project. I understand they're not going to be full grown trees. They're going to take a little while to grow in. So after the project and the temporary bridge is removed, we would go out there and seed it. We'd reestablish the turf. We'd really bring your property and your lawn back to kind of its existing condition. It would be slightly, like I said, we are widening the road there, so it is going to be slightly closer to your property. There's going to be some permanent right-of-way rights here. In terms of construction, it is in 2025. It's several years away. The play structure, the clubhouse, that can be it can be moved. The contractors will come. They've done this before. They can move it to another suitable location on the lawn, so that can be used during construction. There will be, some project fence put up, so there is some separation between kind of your property and this temporary roadway that would go through. Noise, we do limit the amount of noise that can go on, especially like during the evening. If we put a temporary bridge up here, I would assume that there would be no construction at night. I would guess there would be no nighttime work here.
You would have noise from cars.
17,000 cars per day are going to be driving through my side yard and out exiting out my driveway.
And all their lights are going to shine through our dining room and through our living room, which they don't do now. And they're going to be going on both sides of our house instead of one side of our house. So there will be more noise, whether it's construction noise, we'll definitely have car noise.
So how much is the road going to widen, and is it possible to arrange a site visit with somebody so they can walk me through it, so I know what you're looking at?
Yeah, so I think Gary mentioned this before. So I think the first step is, the town needs to decide kind of what alternative they're moving forward with. Once we know that, we'll develop plans. I mean, these are scoping plans. They're very, very rough. We're not showing the toe of slope there, all of the impacts. So what needs to happen once we have a direction from the town is we would go and really identify, the area of involvement and those impacts. And once we know that, then we will schedule a property owner visit with all of the property owners and meet individually, discuss concerns, discuss impacts.
Do you know how much of our yard you're taking? Because we really only have 8 feet of front yard. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of front yard before I'm worried about cars going so fast hitting our front porch or our living room if you're taking more of our front yard.
Yeah, so the way we're widening it, we are widening it kind of equidistant on both sides. We're trying to widen the same amount on the north and the south side. It would be widening the road 18 feet total. And then if the town does move forward with the addition of a sidewalk, that's an additional, 5 feet.
It is a factor through this road. I really don't think anybody really does 30 miles an hour. I can tell you that because I'm out there running all the time. So if you widen it, it's like putting 91 in front of our house. You're just going to go faster because you have wider. I've had people try to swerve around cars that stopped for me to go through that breakdown lane. Luckily, the breakdown lane right now is not wide enough for a car to squeeze by.
You widen it, it's going to create more safety issues.
If you widen it, you'll have a breakdown lane that people can swerve around cars that are stopped. And I think you're going to have more hazards. It makes me more nervous to go out there to run now. To cross that street now is not very safe. I've gotten so that I wear all yellow because it's that scary to cross the road. I will not let my children cross that road by themselves, and we always go to the crosswalk, always.
Okay, so this is the initial identification, and I think that the Smith family and V-Trans have a lot of discussions to have. So I'm hoping that they will communicate and Let's hear the next commenter, Michael Bosworth. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael Bosworth from Brattleboro. I want to first state that, I'm looking forward to having this new bridge there. I think, it's really a choke point. And I don't do an awful lot of biking, but I know people do. I think it's a real discourager to biking. So a new bridge would help with that a lot. I do hear where the Smiths are coming from. And one thing was raised, whether a sidewalk is needed on both sides. I don't have a firm opinion on that, but the town should at least think about that one. I definitely like the idea of the new bridge. As a person who lives on Meadowbrook Road, which is part of the detour, if there were a detour, I would not, that would definitely affect our quality of life on Meadowbrook Road to have that much traffic come up. It's just, pointing out a couple of other things, sort of in a selfish mode here. That road, Meadowbrook recently got paved, so I don't know what that much traffic would do to the new pavement. But also, I think people realize that part of that route is dirt road, the Orchard Street. So have that many cars trying to negotiate that during mud season would seem to be inviting, I'm not sure exactly what, but nothing good. So that's it as far as my comments.
Thank you, Michael. Gary, do you have a comment?
Nope.
Hello, Gary.
Oh, other Gary, sorry, Gary Stroud.
Sorry.
I tell you, it's just raining Garys out here, huh?
I think so, yes.
I like the concept. I like the idea. I guess if they can go back to the course, I just wanted to see something at the bottom which said duration. I don't know if you can go back on the screen where the course and everything, if you look way at that. Now, when you see what it says design life years, is the basically structure included with the design life? Could you say, what is it, 100 years you're looking at?
Yes, this is the new bridge would be designed to 100 years. So again, typically it's usually about 75 years. When we go up to 100 years, and Gary might be able to, he's kind of more on the design side, kind of what that means, but it's, instead of epoxy coated reinforcing steel, we use stainless steel reinforcement. There's some additional kind of design details that are a little bit more costly, but do give us some additional design life for the bridge.
Okay, because looking at that, like you said, the ecological side of that, conservation and tree, because I'm on two of the committees there. I guess there'll be questions discussed about, even with noise, it affects, animals and all that, and being with climate change too, that is in a flood zone, basically we're getting more heat. So now that factoring that in, would that cut back or cut down the duration of the design life on that, bringing us back again to having to approach this to bringing it up to whatever, hopefully by that time climate change might be under control, if there's any type of duration, because being in that area too, it's highly likely that's going to be a case, because like being in that, I think FEMA stated that is a flood zone, if I'm not mistaken, Laura.
Yes, correct.
So what contingency did you have in place for that?
You mean in terms of the flood zone?
Yes.
Yeah, so the bridge will be designed, to take on floodwaters. We get into that funky zone where if we make the bridge longer, the superstructure is going to be deeper. And so it actually makes kind of like a dam for water. So it's really, you know, we find that happy medium, that happy in between in the design to make this, you know, the best structure it can be possibly hydraulically. But it's just, it comes down to it is in a flood zone. And it's never going to be perfect. It will be improved.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what Select Board Member Tim had mentioned too, that we want to look back on our, you know, our journey into the next beyond, and look back and say, hey, something's not working. We thought that was going to happen, but nothing's guaranteed, as we know. But it's just that possible. Would it be insured or in a sense like that the cost won't come out of the town or anything like that if that does happen to the bridge itself, or that would be coming out of the taxpayers, you know, in that sense, or the state or the federal government will pick up the tab?
Gary, I think you have to keep in mind that what you're discussing in terms of the design life being 100 years,
right?
That your and Tim's deathbed regrets are really well beyond. I mean, 100 years.
Right, being practical about that is true. I was just thinking because in the area that it's in, it's like, if I can't see, you can't move it away from that area, but it's just, that was my only concern, is about the erosion part and anything being in that area, and that with the climate and things getting worse, hopefully it'll get better. That doesn't cause any more substantial damage where it's going to be a costly take.
Well, I'm sure they're taking erosion into concern, but I think the other Gary would like to answer your question, Gary. So
well, thank you, Gary.
Let's let the other Gary speak.
Okay. You know, in addition to what Laura had to say, you know, VTrans designs our structures to for scour resistance. So when we do have storms, that generally what occurs is like the fill around the structure may get washed away, but the bridge would remain intact. So the fill could be reestablished around the bridge, and there wouldn't be you know, extraordinary cost to, you know, replace a bridge per se. So it's we do consider those factors in design.
I have a feeling Nick's probably muted himself again.
Yeah, Nick.
He might want to add.
Yeah.
No, what you said is great. My teachings have worked. Unfortunately, you know, I deal with climate change on a daily basis. There are, you know, national and even some regional predictions how climate change will affect us. At a localized project level, we do not use climate change because there are actually some areas that are becoming more arid. I don't think that's necessarily happening in Vermont, but it is happening across the country. So there's just too many unknowns to start applying climate change to our projects. We would love to do it, but also there's just not enough funding. So, you know, we still have structurally deficient structures on the network, which are a risk for failure just because the concrete has eroded away or the steel is rusted. And we currently don't have money to fix those. So to add another layer of climate change is just not economically feasible at this point. But it is quite a robust, most of our structures are quite robust. They do have 1 foot of freeboard at the design flow. So that's kind of like a buffer. Usually it's so that ice and debris can pass under the bridge during high flow events. But then Gary mentioned scour too. So you might see some washout, some roadway overtopping that might cause damage to the roadway, but the bridge itself, the abutments, the deck, all of the big rugged concrete pieces should stay there, and it's kind of an easy fix as opposed to rebuilding a bridge.
Great. Well, unless anyone has any final comments, I'm ready to thank Laura, Nick, and Gary for their presentation. You've given us a lot to think over. Someone from the public has a final comment? The meeting room? Yes, Mr. Smith.
Yes. Due to my numerous questions that I would like to have a dialogue with somebody. Is there who's going to reach out to me, and when can I expect that to happen?
That will be Gary, and it will probably be, I mean, it could be a year from now, 6 months from now. It's not going to be in the next couple of weeks. We first need to get a consultant on board for the design. The town, I don't know what kind of deliberation. Sometimes it takes a little while for the town to get back to us with a preferred alternative. If there is somebody that you want to talk to before, you can feel free to reach out to myself or Gary.
Okay, I do, don't get me wrong, I do believe that bridge needs to be replaced. And rather than waiting to discuss concerns and possible other options before the planning, the money and time is wasted in all the planning and then possibly having to have a fight because I don't agree with it. I would rather talk to somebody sooner than later to save everybody all around. Like, I'm not against a bridge. I understand it has to happen, but rather than wait till, everybody's thought out what they believe they should have, I would like to have at least a voice in expressing concerns and possible solutions before you waste the time and money for something that I may have firsthand knowledge because I live right there and I see it every day, and I've lived there for 20 years. I just figured if somebody reached out earlier than later, we can work more together rather than you present something that, maybe I'll have a real problem with.
Yeah, I might suggest that's actually a good conversation for you to have with the town. Right now, Laura kind of said this earlier on, is VTrans is presenting an alternative and we have a recommended alternative, but this is a town-owned structure and VTrans is only going to proceed forward with the project that the town wants. So if there's traffic calming or sidewalk features and anything that the town would like to see, definitely, and it can come from anyone. I mean, it's easier if VTrans deals directly with the select board. We obviously deal with impacted property owners, but I think if the town and the local property owners can work together, that would definitely help it on our end. I mean, VTrans is not trying to force this project. We're kind of talking about it like it's a done deal. It definitely is not. So we are going to be patiently waiting for a letter from the town telling us what alternative we are going to proceed with. So and that's really why we haven't reached out previously. We kind of have to show our hand somewhere. And if we were to spend a lot of time talking with you about site-specific issues, somebody else might come in from the town and we might go a whole different direction. So we do this somewhat purposely to present everything in a public forum. That way everybody's informed at the same time. It's a dialogue almost all the way up until construction. And I think VTrans in Vermont in general is very good about involving property owners and communities. So I'm a little biased when I say that, but I do truly think we do a good job. Sometimes it's impossible to manage everyone's impact. Somebody always walks away a little bit unhappy. If we were to just do the closure, the trucking community would obviously blow up. So it's a balancing act, and we really try to do the best we can.
So Mr. Smith, why don't you contact Mr. Elwell and we can figure out a way for all your concerns to be heard at the town level.
And if you don't mind, if I add something to that,
please.
There are a lot of mitigations that can happen for that we can do for the actual construction period in terms of the width of the road, because I know that was one of your big concerns, and just for the town's benefit as for hearing this as well. This is on the national highway system. We do have state standards that we design to. And when we put a new 100 bridge in place, we design to the state design standards. So our state design standards do call for an 11-foot travel lane and 10-foot shoulders.
So those are non-negotiable?
It's being on the national highway system, we would design to our minimum standard.
So that you're saying that's non-negotiable?
I'll jump in here. I'll say it's not negotiable at Laura and I's level, but there is executive staff above us, and again, we're always willing to have the conversation.
Thank you, sir.
And we do look up the corridor, down the corridor, you know, if a lot of the corridor has those 10-foot shoulders, you know, or if the entire corridor has 8-foot shoulders, there are instances where we would construct 8-foot shoulders to match the corridor.
It's a lot less. Okay.
And Peter,
Okay.
Peter, I think, has something to add.
May I?
Please, Peter.
Thank you. Yeah, so Mr. Smith, I do want to encourage you to be in touch with me at the town manager's office, and we'll talk. And I will facilitate some additional communication with VTrans. I want to say two things about the steps forward. VTrans has been an amazingly good partner to the town. It's not true of state departments of transportation everywhere across the country. But in our experience here in Brattleboro, on working on some very large projects and some smaller projects, VTrans has been a really good partner. I think it is important that good, productive relationship that we have be that we engage sooner than later. So I want to just affirm what you've said, Mr. Smith, about wanting to address some of these issues so that we sort of all have a sense of where we're headed. I personally think that's going to be important before the select board is put in the position of making a decision and providing its official input to this process in the way that VTrans needs us to. But for the board to make that kind of an important decision in a fully informed manner, I think we have to have some of these conversations first. And I think it has to include all of us, because VTrans knows things, frankly, that we don't know. And VTrans is going to be a 90% or perhaps higher funder of this work. It's going to be a VTrans run job, even though we keep talking about it as a town bridge. We'll be a supporting partner in it, but it's going to be a VTrans project. And for all those reasons, I think it's important that we all be in the conversation, or some representative group of us be in the conversation. I'll be happy to work together with the parties to make that possible.
Great, Peter. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Smith,
Yep.
I'm sure you know how to get in touch with Mr. Elwell.
I can figure it out.
Okay. All right. I just want to thank VTrans again for this presentation. There's a lot of interesting things here, and we just thank you for thinking of us and our bridge. And thank you.
54.
Now it is after 8, and so we need to take a break so that our interpreters also get a break. So why don't we reconvene at 8:15? Thank you. We're moving on to a couple of other exciting things under the heading of stormwater management. Peter, do you want to introduce these topics?
Sure. So we have a pair of items on this evening regarding stormwater management. The first is Sue Fillion will be speaking to an opportunity that we have to create a stormwater management plan, which is actually a pretty substantial undertaking at no cost to the town. She'll explain the details of how that's happening and why that's happening. And what it means for us. And the second stormwater item will be Dan Tyler speaking to the results of a feasibility analysis that's been conducted for the town regarding the creation of a stormwater utility. We've been talking about now for the last couple of years. And he'll talk about the particular findings of that report and the guidance it gives us about next steps. And between the two items, there's a nexus about sort of how to make the best way forward for the town regarding the additional responsibilities we have for stormwater management.
Great. Welcome, Sue.
Okay. Hello again. So we have been informed by Vermont DEC that they would like to do a stormwater master plan for us. So This started in the spring when some staff were having conversations with the Wyndham Regional Commission and DEC about some stormwater issues in Brattleboro and looking for funding so that we could do some conceptual design work. And then the next thing we know, we were included in a request for proposals that Vermont DEC put out to do stormwater master plans in 8 communities throughout Vermont. And so since 2013, Vermont DEC has been funding stormwater master plans to reduce sediment and nutrients in Vermont's waterways. And I suspect that they probably started up in the Lake Champlain and Memphremagog areas, because this all comes out of Vermont Clean Water Act, which is known as Act 64. And now they're making their way down to other impaired water bodies, and several of the towns are in the Connecticut River watershed. So the state put out a request for proposals and has hired Watershed Consulting. They're a firm that I've worked with in the past when we did work on the Whetstone corridor. They did some stormwater on the project that the EPA did with us. And what they're proposing to do, it's basically a 3-year project, or 3 years. It would start, they've actually started doing some work, gathering information. But what they're going to do is basically look at the 3-acre sites in Brattleboro. So it's, if you have 3 acres of impervious surface, you're going to be required to have a stormwater permit if you don't already have one. And there's kind of a phase-in date from the state. So they're going to be creating a list of all the 3-acre impervious surface sites in Brattleboro by basically doing a desktop review and information that the town might have. And then they're going to look at 40 sites to look at best management practice opportunities on those sites. And then they're going to rank it based on feasibility. And then they're going to bring it down to 18 sites that would have impactful benefit water quality and be feasible for a stormwater best management practice. And then they're going to have another ranking criteria that they already have in place, and basically narrow it down to 3 sites where they're actually going to bring it to 30% design concepts for implementing best water management, best practices on them. And so, yeah, it'll start, it's kind of starting at this point. There'll be more work in 2022. There'll be some public outreach. They'll be working both with town sites and private properties. And they'll only do work with the private properties if they can come to some landowner agreement. But basically, they're gonna give us a lot of information that I think will be useful for any sites that the town is responsible for getting a 3-acre permit on, but also helping out the private landowners who might have obligations as well. This kind of leads into Dan's presentation on a stormwater utility, but they are aware that we're interested in looking at a stormwater utility. And so we think that there's information from this work that will feed into that. And really all they're asking for from Brattleboro is a letter of intent, which is basically just saying that we will cooperate with them. We can, leave at any time, but that we'll provide information to them. We'll help them out where we can. So it's a fully funded Vermont DEC project for the town.
Great, Peter.
And I'll just add, we brought this forward to you tonight as an item that does not need your action, because basically if you had some reason to be concerned about us participating in this, then you could tell us to stop. But so long as you feel comfortable with it proceeding in the manner that Sue has described, and we were confident that you would view this the way we viewed this, as actually, an opportunity to get a lot of information that we really need and get it free of charge based on the state's offer. So our intent is that I'll sign that letter, and before the end of this week, we will have done the one thing we need to do to become a partner in this, unless you tell us not to.
So how about some nodding heads without having a formal vote? Everybody sounds good.
Don't
Okay,
stop.
great.
Thank
Thank you, Sue. Thank you.
You're
Peter.
welcome.
Okay, Mr. Tyler, congratulations have already been offered.
Thank you. Good evening. So we presented you with a stormwater feasibility study that was developed by Stevens and Associates. Everyone knows the stormwater costs are rising, and we're responsible for more rules and regulations in terms of the MRGP and the stormwater permits for the different developments in town. And now we have this 3-acre rule coming up. So we've been talking about the utility for a while. This report really dives into the feasibility of it, looks at several other utilities that have been developed in Vermont, compares some of our situations and similarities and differences to those, briefly touches on different fee structures that would have to be considered, and kind of outlines steps that we think we should take to move forward towards the utility. And the first step really being program definition, and a huge part of that is the stormwater master plan that Sue just talked about. A lot of information is going to come from that. That's going to help define our responsibilities as a town. We're also recommending as the next step forward that we do some pretty deep deed research into our existing stormwater responsibilities. The state lists about 30 operational stormwater permits in town. We currently share responsibility on 8 of them, but it seems like we may be linked to others. Stevens and Associates has identified those sites, and Bob Fisher is going to do the deed research and dive into that a little deeper. And this can all happen while the master plan's happening. I think as the master plan happens, some of that information could be taken prior to its completion to move the utility forward. The next steps after we define the program definition would be looking at the financial planning for the utility, bringing in some stakeholders, community stakeholders, V-Trans, to look at what we're proposing, and then really lay out the program, pick a fee structure, write ordinances, and really get into the nitty-gritty of it. Stevens really laid it out. When you read the report, it's evident that it's important to kind of work those steps in that order: program definition, financial planning, stakeholder participation, and administration and data, because we're really going to glean information from each step that's going to make the next step easier. So we think that this stormwater master plan is important. We can keep working on some deed research and then continue forward. But all in all, it looks like utility is very possible here in Brattleboro.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to just add something here as well, because particularly for those who have been following the select board's discussion of this item over the last couple of years, actually, and you established it earlier this year as one of the goals for this select board year, was to begin this process of moving forward to create the stormwater utility. It's important for us to note that we knew, first of all, that it would take a couple of years from starting until implementing, that this would be a very complex process with a lot of engineering attached to it. And that the first piece of work that we would need to do would be to engage an engineer to do the kind of analysis that's going to happen in the stormwater management plan, but do it for us, with us as the client at town cost. And so, what's happening here as a result of the fact that we're going to fit ourselves into DEC's program is it's going to move a little bit more slowly at the beginning than it might have if we were, directing all the activity. But in exchange for that, we're going to get this huge body of work done that is, defining the scope of, how we then move forward to create the utility and get that done for free. And so it feels like a really good trade-off to town staff. It feels like this is the launch that we've all been looking forward to. It's just launching a bit differently than we had expected. But with the feasibility report in hand, we now have a map of, the additional things that we can do simultaneous with the master plan, and then what the next steps will be when that work is done. So we're happy to answer questions you might have or have some additional discussion about it, but it's feeling to us like this is the evening when we're actually launching the effort.
Well, I'm all in favor of that launch. And I just want, if you could explain to the public a little bit more that when all is said and done, the fees that will be paid are primarily fees that the state will pay us because they're the primary stormwater driver.
I'm going to say it a little softer than that, but the state's role is really important here. So I don't know that I would characterize the state as the primary contributor, but they're a very significant contributor of stormwater runoff into their systems. And so while so there's two different aspects about the fee structure that are probably worth reinforcing at this moment. One is the general principle that this can operate, stormwater management can operate like a water or sewer utility. That's why they're called stormwater utilities, is that you create these methodologies for determining how much runoff from properties is contributing to the overall effort of maintaining proper stormwater management in the community. And then there's a formula that allocates to large properties with huge parking lots a much greater share of the cost than to say a private residence or a small commercial property that doesn't send a lot of runoff into the system. And so there's an inherent fairness in having this be a fee-based structure that those who contribute more to the problem, which is becoming a very large challenge and a very expensive challenge for the town, will be contributing more to the operational cost of it than those who don't contribute as much. Right now, what we're doing is funding this work through property taxes. And so there isn't a nexus between who pays how much and who contributes how much to the challenge. So creating that nexus is important. And in doing that, there are entities that don't pay any property taxes at all that will be ratepayers into the stormwater utility. So the state of Vermont is, a very important one in that regard because of the interstate highway that passes through Brattleboro, because of the other state highways and the state-owned properties in town. The state does have a lot of impervious area that it is responsible for within the community, and will pay, according to the fee structure that ultimately gets established, they'll pay a share into this operating cost. And there are other tax exempt properties where the properties are large and contribute substantially to the stormwater challenges in Brattleboro. And they'll be also paying their fair share as a ratepayer, just as when they consume water or sewer services, they do pay, even though they don't pay property taxes.
Great. And then the overall message is that stormwater management is an environmental benefit.
Absolutely.
Just in case anyone's losing sight of that. Ian?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a deep dive question. It's probably for Dan. So I'm looking at the feasibility study, and I gotta say, it's great. So thanks to Stevens Associates for doing such a good job. So I understand from this that if we move forward with the plan, we would be the only stormwater utility that doesn't have an ability to have MS4 permits. And that's because we don't have a comprehensive stormwater management plan. And the stormwater master plan that we just talked about with Sue is not a comprehensive stormwater management plan. Is that something that we should be thinking about trying to do so that we can allow for MS4 permits as we actually move into creating the stormwater utility? Or is there a reason that we don't want to be doing that? And if we did have an MS4 permit ability, I understand that we would have to have maybe an employee to do that. Could that money to pay for that employee come from the utility?
Money would come from the utility likely to pay for management of permits that we do have. We likely we won't be an MS4 community because we don't have a combined sewer and stormwater system. So a lot of places, the stormwater is combined with the sanitary sewer, and they have a lot of overruns during rain events because of and that's where the comprehensive management plan for the stormwater comes in. Our stormwater and sanitary sewer are separate.
So it's like not even on the table then. We couldn't.
Right. Correct.
So I understand. Okay.
Further clarification on that is MS4 is a federal classification that gets imposed upon you if you are above a certain threshold of negatively impacting fresh waters. So if we were sending dirtier water into the fresh waters in town, then we might be classified by higher authorities as being an MS4 community. But for the reason Dan cited, we're not. We've got a good separation in our system where we don't have the phosphorus runoff problem that they have up in the Lake Champlain area. So that's just not a factor for us.
So it's a distinction we don't want.
We don't want to be an MS4. So all of those other communities that have stormwater utilities all have combined for okay. Well, that answers my question. Thank you.
Daniel?
Thanks. Can you all hear me okay? Because I had a headphone microphone issue earlier. I guess I'm kind of curious about like the timeline for the next steps, right? So there's this program definition phase. And I guess I'm a little curious, like when the decision would be made by, I'm assuming, us as water and sewer commissioners about like the fee structure. Are we talking like this year? A couple of years?
Yeah, definitely not this year. Definitely, yes, a decision to be made by the board. I don't know for sure that there won't be RTM approval needed also in terms of the creation of a utility as part of the sort of family of operations we have. We've got the other enterprise funds. That's something we'd have to look at with Bob Fisher. It'll be a very clear, easy answer from him, but it's not something we've talked about yet, so I don't know the answer. But there will be threshold decisions for you as a board to make along the way that will lead to sort of that big decision about creating the utility, adopting an ordinance, and adopting the fee structure. And it'll be quite a while before we're ready for those things to happen because of the need to do this engineering work through the Stormwater Management Plan and the deed research that Bob is going to do. I would expect you're going to get updates on this during 2022, maybe start to make some decisions during 2022, but it's likely out beyond that before you start making really substantive decisions about the utility.
Great. I hope that future board remembers this moment, and I hope that when we come to the fee structure, we go for the most equitable structure possible. I know that, there's some flat fee, there's some hybrid, there's some other stuff, and I know that it gets way more complicated the further you get away from flat fee, but equity being important. Ian.
Okay. Are we good? Ready to move on with our thanks to Sue and Dan?
Thanks to you both.
Great. Brattleboro Retreat Agreement for Annual Voluntary Non-Tax Contribution. Peter?
Yes.
Oh, wait.
Well, I see Tom.
I see a hand up. Tom?
Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me? Good evening.
Yeah, hi, Tom. We can hear you. I'm sorry.
Hi,
I should have
thank you.
asked for public comment.
Oh, that's all right. As a chair of the planning commission, I understand sometimes it's easy to forget all those steps. But I'm not necessarily speaking officially as the chair of the Planning Commission right now. But in that role, I'm pretty familiar with the planning, or getting more and more familiar with the land use and development regs. And seeing that this was coming up on y'all's agenda, I knew that, to me, it seems like there's a pretty strong nexus of this, the utility, with the land use and development regs. Maybe, as some of you know, there's an entire section devoted to stormwater. And, just to summarize briefly, stormwater is mentioned 113 times, and impervious surfaces are mentioned 42 times. So all I want to say at this point is that I hope, as we move forward with this, this theme and this utility, that we align it, or what's the way to say this? I don't know, bounce ideas back and forth, or kind of coordinate with our zoning, our land use regs, so that way they gel well together. And so that way people, there's an incentive to control stormwater runoff in the best way possible, and everything's aligned. So just wanted to make that heard.
That's just great. And I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the beauty of having both Sue and Dan working on pieces of this project together, not only for the good of stormwater management, but for the public understanding. Peter, did you want to add something?
No, that was exactly the point I wanted to make. Thanks, Tom, for that. That it is critically important. This is an issue of significance, both for good land use regulation and management, and for us fulfilling our role as the sort of keepers of the broad drainage system in town. Right. The two, you can't succeed at the two tasks without recognizing them as being interrelated.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And Sue does a great job of keeping us informed about these things, but it just also felt like a good time to chime in.
Yep.
From the Planning Commission specific angle. So, all right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for chiming in. Appreciate it. All right. Any other members of the public like to speak about stormwater management? Then we'll move on. Peter, take it away. Yeah.
So the next item on the agenda is staff's recommendation for you to approve an agreement we have negotiated with the Brattleboro Retreat. It's an agreement that will provide for a voluntary non-tax payment. We often refer to these, especially when we're discussing the budget, as pilots or payments in lieu of taxes. In Vermont, there's a nuance in the state statutes that only the state of Vermont pays pilots to municipalities. And so when a private entity is paying something that looks and feels like a pilot, here we call it a voluntary non-tax payment. The retreat has a long history in Brattleboro. It was created in the 1830s. There is state legislation dating back to the formative years of the retreat in the 1830s that makes the initial properties tax exempt. There was action taken around this in 1858 that said everything that had been developed on the property up to that time remained tax exempt, but that the further development of the property afterwards would be taxable property. So key to this discussion are the pre-1858 properties of the retreat and the post-1858 properties of the retreat. Most of what you see and think of as the Brattleboro Retreat on the campus, on the east side of Linden Street, are pre-1858 properties. And most of the retreat's holdings on other properties on the other side of Linden Street and elsewhere around town are post-1858. It's not quite that clean of a division, but that's a kind of a good frame of reference. On the post-1858 taxable properties, the retreat pays property taxes. This year is paying $71,000 worth of property taxes to the town. But the pre-1958 properties remain tax exempt. There was litigation several times over the last century and a half between the town and the retreat regarding this matter. The most recent litigation was back in 2000, and there was a settlement agreement at that time between the retreat and the town that created a formula for the retreat, for the town to calculate and then confirm with the retreat and then receive from the retreat a voluntary non-tax payment that is meant to be a consideration by the retreat to the town for the fact that the retreat is a large institution in town and does have an impact on town operations and services, and dependency on some town services, and that it is arguably, because of the tax exemption on the pre-1858 properties, not paying, quote unquote, its fair share of property taxes. So it makes an additional contribution in this voluntary way. That initial settlement agreement from the 2000 litigation was expiring in 2020. It was a 20-year agreement. A year ago, in the summer of 2020, we were all coping with the onset of COVID. It now seems a long time ago, but you know, it was all new to us. We were all very much in an adapting mode of, you know, how to keep functioning effectively during that time of public health threat. And so between that and the financial issues that the retreat was grappling with and with together with the state of Vermont, it didn't feel like an opportune time to negotiate a new agreement or an extension of the old agreement. And we agreed very easily and readily with one another to do a 1-year extension of that. The select board approved that for the town a year ago. So the 2000 agreement has been in effect until now, but it is expiring in 2021. And so we have had negotiations over the last several months to see how we might replace that agreement or extend that agreement. I say the last several months, the communication began that long ago. The really sort of more intense getting down to details part of this was over the last, I'd say probably 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. And we have arrived at a place that is, from staff's point of view, fair and equitable. It is similar to, but not identical to, what was in the 2000 agreement. It builds on the 2000 agreement. Importantly, rather than try to rewrite something from scratch, this is an addendum to that agreement, or an amendment to that agreement. So it takes most of the terms between the parties from the settlement back in 2000 and continues them in place for 3 more years. But it changes the formula by which the voluntary non-tax payment is made, or calculated rather, to be made to the town. The upshot of it is that there's a modest change. In both cases, the before and the after, we're talking about, you know, between $10,000 and $20,000 of voluntary contribution to the town. The upside for the town, the change in the method of calculation makes a lower fixed amount, base amount, if you will, and then higher upside potential in the calculation related to leased property. The key to the 2000 agreement and continuing now going forward in this proposed agreement is the assessment of, or analysis of, the properties that are rented by the retreat to other parties for other purposes. So things that are beyond the basic operations of the retreat. In that case, they're operating more like a landlord. And so this voluntary non-tax payment looks at those relationships, those leases, and calculates an impact from those that relate, you know, that then determines the amount that's paid to the town. So the base amount for the next 3 years would be less than what the base amount has been, but the upside potential, if more of those properties are leased, is greater for the town than it was under the prior calculation. It feels fair to us. The difference in the total value of the arrangement is immaterial to us in the context of a $19 million budget. This is something the retreat doesn't have to do, but chooses to continue to do with the town voluntarily, and staff recommends your approval.
Great. Any comments?
No, thank you for the pretty complete, sorry, I'm just jumping in. I didn't raise my
Go
hand.
right
Liz.
ahead. Go ahead.
Apologize. Thanks for the explanation, Peter. I think it, you know, it strikes a balance between organization that's important to the town, but also uses town services. So I appreciate a continued partnership with the Brattleboro Retreat on many levels.
Ian or Daniel, do you have anything further to add?
Crickets.
Okay, are there members of the public who would like to speak on this topic? I don't see any, and therefore I would entertain a motion.
I've got it.
Okay, Ian.
I move to approve an amended agreement regarding taxation of the Brattleboro Retreat, pre-1858 real property.
Great. Mr. Goodenow has moved to approve an amended agreement regarding taxation of Brattleboro Retreat pre-1858 real property. All select board members in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is carried 4-0. Thank you. Okay. Drum roll. Who had the drum roll for us? That was something else. Yes.
That's rubbish. Oh no.
The next item is a VCDP grant for Healthworks, and this is a very exciting process. Peter, would you like to open this up?
Actually, I would like to introduce Patrick and partners to present this item to the board. Thank you.
Excellent. Patrick and partners.
Yes, good evening. So staff is here this evening asking the board to hold a public hearing and to authorize the submission of an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for an implementation grant for the Brattleboro Memorial Hospital in the amount of $500,000 for a project that's entitled Healthworks ACT. Now, this particular grant request falls into what's called a public service category, which is outside the typical parameters for the Vermont Community Development Program. As the board and the public is well aware, this program is primarily used for either housing or economic development. However, the state is has a certain amount of COVID-related federal funding in hand and are welcoming public service requests. So this is a nice fit for this particular type of project with this particular type of program. Brattleboro Memorial Hospital would be the town's subrecipient and principal partner. However, this particular project is coming forward from a number of different institutions within the town. So it's not just the hospital, it's the Brattleboro Retreat, Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services, and Groundworks Collaborative. And what is being proposed is what's called an assertive community treatment model. This is an exciting new partnership between these organizations intended to deliver comprehensive healthcare services to folks suffering from homelessness in our community, and doing so in a community-based setting rather than in the emergency room. So that's all I'm going to say about this project. I would ask the board to open the public hearing and then hear from Dr. Kathleen McGraw and Rihanna Kendrick.
Great. I will open the public hearing. Do I have to do anything other than just say those words, Patrick?
Nope.
Great. Hi, Kat. How are you? Welcome.
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. So I want to thank you for inviting us to have an opportunity to speak just briefly about this project. We're really excited about this really unique, important collaboration to benefit the people of Brattleboro, and hope that you will be too. At BMH, as you, I think, are aware, we really see what's broken in healthcare in a way that nobody else has that same window. But one of the things that we see is that folks with mental health diagnoses and folks who are housing insecure or homeless really need alternative locations for services than the ED. Our ED ends up being the front door, and as everybody knows, that's not the best place to go when you're in stress. It's a stressful location to be. So, it's sometimes for patients who are in acute mental health crisis, being in the emergency department can be worse. And really counterproductive for their treatment. During COVID, we have found that we need to figure out how to manage to get services to these patients who have mental health diagnoses and homelessness or housing insecurity. At the same time, be able to care for other problems of other community folks as well. And we worked with a number of different organizations, the three others besides ourselves that are mentioned, to really trial an approach in town, coupling a medical nurse practitioner, a psychiatric nurse practitioner with groundworks, with the Brattleboro Retreat, and with HCRS to go out to folks where they are and really provide services. It's really been a tremendous success, but a tiny little pilot. And so what we are proposing to do here is to really expand on that project. And so we've created Healthworks ACT. ACT, or Assertive Community Treatment, Rihanna will speak a little bit about it, is really a unique data validated approach to treating mental health issues and keeping people in the community and preventing them from having to get to the emergency department or inpatient treatment. And it's used, in other communities nationally, providing some 24/7 services for folks. We have a few unique features to ours in that we're collaborating with all of these organizations. It's providing really peer support in leadership positions and also providing medical care in addition to mental health care. For this program, the total cost of it for a year is $1.2 million. And while that sounds very expensive, in point of fact, the cost per person per month, per participant per month, is less than 1 day stay in the emergency department per month, and certainly less than one inpatient day per month in a mental health facility. So it turns out to be really cost effective. And what we do expect that this work will have the data to show that cost effectiveness, and we intend to use that to work with the state to open up some billing codes that will allow us to actually make this self-sufficient. So we're really looking for the funding for this to be a startup. We are working with Senator Leahy with his appropriations process for a little over $600,000, and then, as Patrick mentioned, the remainder between our organizations and this grant process. I'm also working with the Department of Mental Health to really strategize around support for the second year and the support for opening up billing codes so that it can move forward as self-sufficient into the future. It's super exciting. I want to turn it over to Rihanna to really give you a little bit of more of the color of what the project really is like on a day-to-day.
Great, thank you, Kat. Welcome, Rihanna.
Thanks. Thanks, Dr. McGrath. So I think some pieces to add to that, the Healthworks program has existed now for the past few years and has brought on different providers. So it originally began with the Brattleboro Retreat and then added in BMH and then HCRS. And so each of those moments in time that we've been able to add embedded providers to our team has added capacity that we simply as a service provider supporting folks who are homeless or at risk of homelessness simply don't have on site. And it's pretty unusual in terms of our setting. When we began this work a few years ago, we spent a long time saying that we were focused on not creating an alternative system of care. And I think what's really become blatantly obvious to us is that we actually do need an alternative system of care, although we've been able to really work towards a lot of the gaps that we see in the larger systems for folks to access. The primary method to how insurance is billed and how these services are paid for is by having folks at appointments in person. And yet the things that we struggle with most in helping people access those services is transportation and stigma that folks feel around the services that are often being provided. And so we've continued to work on what that looks like and what the next steps look like. I think our work overall through COVID has changed pretty dramatically, not only in the scope, the number, the type of work that we're doing. I think the work that we do at GradWorks is often to continue to assess what the need is and fill many gaps. And so we saw the motel program begin to fill up and expand pretty significantly throughout most of the pandemic so far. There's been approximately 200 households experiencing homelessness in our community that have been housed in motels. And so Healthworks and having the support of even part-time providers to help meet needs in the motel program has created some success around outcomes for people's health. And moving into a more evidence-based model allows us to continue to build on that success. And so the team members are meant to be multidisciplinary. So from a lot of different practices, including psychiatry, social work, nursing, folks supporting substance use needs, peer support folks, and working around vocational rehabilitation or case management. And so all of those pieces all together have, a lot of evidence around how they've been able to support people in both maintaining in their housing, and there's other models that we look to in Vermont. HCRS has an existing ACT team. Pathways Vermont uses an ACT team model. And so not only does this work in a more global perspective, but I think it's important to also recognize the effectiveness of this model in Vermont. Our spin on the ACT model is a little bit different. And so really hoping to kind of take the philosophy of the work that our organizations have done together and continue to be very participant-led and meeting folks' needs where they're at, whether that is that the team is meeting with somebody who's in the community and doesn't have a place to sleep at night, or might be supporting them through the initial lease up of an apartment. And so continuing to do that work and hopefully decrease the significance of the complex needs that we are serving.
Thank you very much.
So we do think that we'll have a lot of folks who will be really better off for this in the long run. And I when I say a lot of folks, I mean specifically the patients and the clients that we're working with, but also a lot of other folks in Brattleboro as well, in that it helps the healthcare system also preserve a capacity for people who need the medical resources that are less readily available right now, and it helps provide the services for folks who don't need ED services, but right now that's the only thing available. The services they need in more appropriate locations.
Great. Well, I'm sure. I just think it's a wonderful program, and I'm thrilled. And I remember when Congressman Welch was here, we heard about this for the first time, and I'm really glad that Senator Leahy has picked up that baton and run with it. So I'm all in favor, but let's hear from the other select board members. Ian?
Yeah, thank you all very much for the presentation. I think the first thing I just want to say is during the last year with the community safety review process, this issue was definitely at the forefront. We heard a lot about this from community members, and it is very exciting to see real action being taken to try to address this problem. So that's awesome, and I am very excited about it. I think one question I have is, based on the layout of the Healthworks Act program that you've presented, it is very clear to me what the roles of BMH and the Groundworks Collaborative are, but the other two identified project partners, the Retreat and HCRS, I'm just curious how they're going to be engaged and what that's going to look like. Because, Groundworks, there's actually going to be physical space there. And then obviously Brattleboro Memorial Hospital is what that, yeah. So that makes a lot more, that's very clear to me. I don't know who I'm directing that question at, whoever wants to answer.
They're all muted, unfortunately.
I was going to say, we had to be unmuted.
Yeah.
And so in terms of HCRS's role, HCRS has existing peer support services. And so their role in this process has been not only have they had involvement all the way through, and we have a shared position that has been either supporting folks around substance use or in more of a case management realm. And so they've actually added components into this project to bring peer support into the mix of things, and that will be a significant part of their role moving forward. And then the retreats role, we have a full-time embedded clinical social worker, and that person will continue to be part of the team. And there's a need for a team lead as part of the ACT model. And so that would be part of the retreats role, is both the coordination and providing kind of ongoing therapeutic supports for folks.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Daniel, Tim?
I fully support it. I'm happy to sign a document that will help you get $500,000 and move further towards this exciting project.
Tim?
Absolutely. Same here. And I'm also very encouraged and hopeful when I read that the goal is to be a self-sustaining model within 2 years. I think it will be wonderful for our community and so many more to be a model of such things. So thank you.
I think that that's actually a really great point about it, because I think that's what makes it a model for the state, because it does make it replicable. And it's really important, because it's not just our community that's wrestling with this, it's every community across the state. And we know that staff are suffering moral injury for not being able to provide the kinds of services to patients that they really need. So replicability about this is a big thing.
Just ramping up capacity is a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Again, I applaud you all, and our role in supporting you at this point is just a ministerial action that we're happy to make. So someone like to make a motion? Daniel.
I'll do it. I love the really long ones. I move to authorize an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for an implementation grant to Brattleboro Memorial Hospital in the amount of $500,000 for the Healthworks ACT project, and to adopt a VCDP resolution identifying Assistant Town Manager Patrick Morland as the contact person and Town Manager Peter Elwell as the authorizing official.
Thank you, Daniel. Daniel has moved to authorize an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for an implementation grant to Brattleboro Memorial Hospital in the amount of $500,000 for the Healthworks ACT project, and to adopt a VCDP resolution identifying Assistant Town Manager Patrick Morland as the contact person and Town Manager Peter Elwell as the authorizing official. All select board members in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 There you go, 4-0. Thank you all. This is really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Yet another interesting program is on our plate. The VCDP grant for Winston Prouty Delta Campus Water Sewer Capacity Study. And I can imagine that's ringing all the bells. Peter, you want to discuss this, or should we go right to Chloe?
If it's all right with you, Madam Chair, I'd like to say just a couple of words of introduction.
Of course, Patrick, thank you.
Sure. So with this particular request, the board is asked to conduct yet another public hearing and to authorize the submission of an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for what is a planning grant for the Winston Prouty Center for Child and Family Development in the amount of $50,000 for the Winston Prouty Delta Water and Sewer Capacity Project. This is standard fare for the Vermont Community Development Program. They are there to assist communities in exploring new ideas. And if the board has seen the map that was included with the board package, there's a very large swath of land which is encompassing the campuses of Winston Prouty and the Delta campus. And some of the planning research which has been going on at Winston Prouty over the last couple of years has identified housing as a real potential for that property. As each of you understands already, we recognize the need for additional housing in Brattleboro, and we think this area of town is a real potential. The one factor that needs to be better understood and better determined, of course, is the capacity of the water sewer system, both on the private property and from within the public system. I know Department of Public Works Director Steve Barrett has been involved in the formulation of this particular project. I know Planning Director Sue Fillion is sitting on the oversight board for this particular project. And once the board opens the public hearing, I know Chloe Leary is here from Winston Prouty, and she is eager to tell you more about the project.
Great. Let's open the public hearing.
Hi, Chloe.
Chloe, would you like to tell us about the project?
Yes. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. And I just want to acknowledge we have folks from Delta here too. So if you have questions for the Delta side of the project, that'd be great. Bob and David McManus are here. So this project really grew out of campus planning, which happened in 2019. As Patrick said, identifying the need for housing in the community and recognizing that this community asset might play a role in that. So we developed a Prouty Delta Development Initiative with the Delta campus, just because it felt like they had some similar goals and values as we did. And so we've been working together for the past year to think about, again, you may have heard me say, we consider ourselves stewards of this land as a community asset. And so continuing in that vein, how do we best meet community needs and help it be sort of the asset that we hope will help our community continue to thrive. So that we had, as I think the COVID-19 pandemic really magnified issues that we've always been challenged with. There are resources. So I think we've just been trying to investigate and accelerate our understanding of what's needed to make this asset viable for building housing. So so this planning grant is really a baseline for us to understand and put a price tag on it, and then potentially access other resources, be ready to access resources as they become available if it's a viable place to build housing. So that's my very quick summary. I know you got some material on it, but open to questions or if anybody else on the team wants to say anything.
Great. Should we ask Mr. McManus just say a few words, and then the select board can question the both of you or comment as they see fit? Mr.
Yes,
McManus?
hello.
Yeah,
Good
hello.
evening. I appreciate the board reviewing this application and this opportunity. It's Chloe and I have been working on it for some time. This concept of joining our campuses and creating quite a unique place to live and work, as Bob has envisioned for a long time for Delta campus. And so we're hugely excited, and with the help of the town and state funding already, we've been able to increase capacity on the Delta side, which will push, accept water and sewer and push water up through Delta campus. And we have our own wells, but when we think about joining the campuses and developing or being part of the planning process to develop the Prouty side, it was pretty quickly brought to our attention that something similar would be needed on the Prouty side of the campus to increase capacity there. So again, appreciate the board and the town reviewing this application and considering it.
Great, thank you. Select board members, do you care to comment? Daniel?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. And, I note that this is at this point just a, planning grant to look at like water and sewer capacity. It's not, getting all the way to building houses, and there's a lot of opportunities, I suppose, for it to not work out. However, I agree with, all assessments that we need more housing in this town and this region and this state. And Chloe, that I've spent some time up in the woods around there on some little retreats and whatnot. And so I'm kind of curious, like the balance between preserving some of that, very nice habitat up there and these plans, tentative plans for building housing. So I'm just kind of wondering if you could at least maybe speak to that as you envisage it at the moment.
Yeah, that's a great point, Daniel. And actually, it's been simultaneous to this. We are actually engaged with a couple different universities, UMass and University of Connecticut, advancing landscape architecture programs that are helping us do exactly that, a design competition, so they can help us think about maximizing green space, being efficient, being sustainable. That's another value that we are, holding ourselves to. But certainly it's not about, the combined campuses are 300 acres. And if you've been on the campus, some of it is probably more buildable than other parts of it. There's a lot of ledge. And so this is not a project about a bunch of houses on 3-acre lots with driveways. This is about all different kinds of housing for all different kinds of people. It has to represent our community. And so it's going to look, I think, a lot of different ways, including housing density might be, is a factor. Like, there's a main part of campus. It could be that some of the housing will go on the main part of campus that's already existing, or on the Delta side, they already had housing plans. So I certainly think that we recognize that part of the asset is maintaining green space too. So that is a big consideration. It's not, it's not, we're not going to cut down all the trees and put up a bunch of houses. So, and I think, just to say, David mentioned like a place to live, work, and play. So, again, Bob Johnson has always been saying that, and that's informing where we are now. It has to be attractive. There are trails, there are recreational opportunities, and that's part of what's going to make this an attractive spot for, that long-term sustainable economic growth, and getting people here who want to stay here.
Thank you. Tim?
Thanks to you both. I have to say that thanks for the map, by the way, whoever decided to give us this map, because the hilarious thing is I've actually, I think like a lot of us with our housing issues, it's easy to just, I have some maps on my wall I'm looking at right now. You go and you look like, where can we try to encourage people to build? And I'm always focused on places like Putney Road, but about a year ago, a friend of mine was talking about the Prouty campus, and I was excited then. But then seeing this map, I actually, in my brain, I never really connected the two campuses as being abutters, because I connect Delta as Canal Street and Prouty as Maple. And in my brain, they're not even near each other. I don't know why, but it's pretty exciting without getting too excited about it. I'm really happy that you're partnering in at least the early conceptualizing and dreaming. So thank you both.
Ian, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I actually have one for Patrick. So I think I'm gonna ask the question in a way that you can tell me if it's a yes or no. So we've got 2 VCDP grants before us, and the reason that we're not, Brattleboro isn't competing with itself for applying for 2 is because one is an implementation grant and one is a planning grant.
You got it absolutely right, Ian.
Sweet. So, and then actually, and my comment is, yeah, I like double taked at the 100 to 500 housing units in the possible planning concept here. And then was also very grateful for the map, because I definitely did not understand how much space that was. Yeah, it's very exciting. It's kind of hard for me to visualize. And I think that's kind of the idea right now, where this is very early on. But this is the kind of creative thinking we need to be doing to address the housing crisis that Vermont and Brattleboro is facing. So I'm very excited about it, and I'll be really excited to see as this plan progresses and we get a little bit more of an idea of what it's going to look like.
And I just want to add that I agree, as when the town plans, we set out these rules and regulations in the hopes that someone will come up with a creative idea, and here we are, and it's very exciting. And I'm glad that our role is, again, it's ministerial, but we get to support this project, and it's a wonderful idea. And I'm just eager to see how we proceed. So is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this topic?
Oh,
Ian, yes.
I have one other question, and it's probably to Patrick again. Do you think, Patrick, that in the future, when there are more steps to this, that that they could access VCDP grants for other stages of this?
So let me answer that in two different ways. So it is absolutely part of the program that a planning grant recipient can later be an implementation grant recipient. It will depend. So if a housing developer is identified, that developer could potentially apply for an implementation grant, particularly if they were going to be building affordable housing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great. So members of the public, anyone? I don't see any little yellow hands. So I would entertain a motion. Nice long motion.
I think it's Mr. Weston.
Tim.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to authorize an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for a planning grant to the Winston Prouty Center for Child and Family Development, Inc. in the amount of $50,000 for the Winston Prouty / Delta Water and Sewer Capacity Project, and to adopt a VCDP resolution identifying Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland as the contact person and Town Manager Peter Elwell as the authorizing official.
Thank you, Tim. Tim has moved to authorize an application to the Vermont Community Development Program for a planning grant to the Winston Prouty Center for Child and Family Development, Inc. in the amount of $50,000 for the Winston Prouty / Delta Water and Sewer Capacity Project, and to adopt a VCDP resolution identifying Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland as the contact person and Town Manager Peter Elwell as the authorizing official. All select board members in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 That motion is carried 4-0. Okay, thank you both very much. It's very exciting. Best wishes. Committee appointments. If I go to my link on the linked agenda.
Ooh,
fancy.
Fancy.
Yes. Ooh, that's not the linked agenda. Where's the linked agenda? I or someone else could come up with the, here we go.
I have a number of appointments I'd be willing, a number of nominations I'd be willing to make.
Oh, Daniel, that would be outstanding. Thank you.
Can I just do them all in one go?
Yes, please.
Great. None of these are opposed, so
right.
Easy. All right. I would like to nominate to the Agricultural Advisory Committee, Amanda Ellis Thurber, to the Conservation Commission, Kevin O'Brien, to the Development Review Board, Gary Stroud, and to the Senior Solutions Committee, Gary Stroud.
Excellent. So we have a slate of nominees, so we'll vote on them. All select board members in favor of the slate that Daniel has nominated, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That is carried 4-0. So thank you all for volunteering to those committees. And lo and behold, we're at the end of our agenda. There's so many exciting things tonight. It's really great.
was a great meeting.
Was a great meeting. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
It's Old Man Wessel's move. Go.
I just did the last one. I'll move to adjourn.
Tim has moved to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Good night and thank you all very much.